What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, aka Unique Mazik, the hardest working man in sports and gaming. Let's talk NBA 2K20 and let's talk MyGM, MyLeague. Y'all know it's still my favorite mode. I know I did play a lot of my team in with 2K19, but I'm really looking. I've been looking over the last 2 or 3 years, and I really feel like I've been neglecting the modes that I love the most. I feel like I've been neglecting the mode that I really based my channel off of when I first started. And I've had this concept and thought in my head before, but I always end up kind of like getting too caught up with like what the most popular mode is, like on social media or whatever. And I start, because obviously my job is to cover sports video games across the board. So there is a certain responsibility to talk about what everybody else is talking about. But I kind of want to get back to really playing and enjoying the franchise mode. So I was sitting around and I was thinking about what parts of the mode, like, my GM, my league are really good for the most part. I still think they're the best franchise modes out there for any sports game. MLB The Show is the closest, as theirs is really good and really fun. I've been having a lot of fun with that as of late. But I still think 2K has the best franchise modes, but that doesn't mean that they're perfect. And I think I've said that before. So I did come up with 10 things that I would really love to see. Some of them, I'll be honest with you, they're probably long shots, but they're still fun just to think about and to discuss. So the first one is a really basic one, and I generally don't like to even include this kind of thing when I'm thinking about stuff that I want in a game, because it probably should be just, well, not probably, it should just be there anyway. And that's my league online server stability, right? The mode was pretty much just like unplayable online for much of the year. Certain things never got fixed, and some of the other stuff that did get fixed, it just wasn't very good. Just to be just totally frank, I mean, you could try to get specific and say, oh well, this part worked, or you could do the off season if you did it on a Sunday. Just overall, it wasn't very good. So that's the first and foremost thing. Even though I still think that my league online is best when you're playing it offline. That's just my own personal belief. But it's still, the online portion is really good and really a really cool aspect of it, because a lot of games have taken their franchise mode off of the they've taken away the online component, and you kind of understand why when you're seeing the problems that 2K is having trying to keep theirs afloat. So it is what it is. But that, as long as my league online exists, the server stability needs to improve. That's, I would say, number one. The number two thing is pretty much, and I'm gonna group all of this kind of together in the same, in the same little segment, and it's creative player stuff. So a lot of this stuff we've been asking for a while. I do understand it's tough asking for this stuff and saying what you think should be in there is completely different than being able to get all this stuff in an 8 and 9 month development cycle. It is not easy to make a video game. Most people who are super critical of the developers are people who have absolutely no concept of what it takes to put these games together. So I am not in any way trying to say, when I talk about what I like to see, I talk about what I like to see from a more educated standpoint. A lot of people just be like, man, that's some garbage. If they can do such thing, then they should be able to do da 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 da. And people who really understand how these games come about, they literally read and listen to those comments and they just shake their head, because they know that the people saying it have no idea what it takes to go into making the game. So I do say this though, that first one I mentioned, the server stability, I kind of don't, there really is no real excuse for that, in my opinion. If you're offering a mode, it should work. That's just that part there, right? Because here's the thing, you really don't have an excuse when it comes to that, because if you can't get it to work, then it just shouldn't be there. You know what I'm saying? That's just, so that one right there, there really is no excuse. But some of the other stuff where people like, oh, they should be able to put this in the game. Yeah, okay. But so I say all that to say the creative player stuff, man, more body types would be ideal. More hairstyles would be ideal. Just there's a lot. I mean, it's a ton of different hairstyles that people are wearing in the NBA, in the world, just period. Both African American hairstyles, European hairstyles, hairstyles you see mostly with Asians, just all across the world. There's different hairstyles, and there's really not. They do have more than they used to have, of course, but overall, there's just not as many represented as what would be ideal. So that's one thing that I think that would be so much better if they added that in there. Also, the ability to have tattoos in the game on your offline creative players. Like a lot of times people who just play like my career or whatever, they may hear me say that and they be like, what do you mean you can't put tattoos on a player? Well, I think it would be, what I'm talking about is when you're for the roster creators out there, if you could put tattoos on the created players that you're making, which you cannot do at this point right now, that would be ideal. Like that would be fantastic if you could do that. So that would, I think, take the whole concept of roster making, that whole thing, that would take it to me to another level. And as somebody who has spent hours making rosters, I mean hundreds, thousands of hours probably making rosters over the past 5 to 7 years or whatever, I definitely would love to see that. Being able to give goggles to players. I know hardly nobody in the NBA wears goggles anymore, but a lot of the people who do still love franchise modes do like the retro rosters and the retro players. So being able to put goggles on people is pretty cool, So would love it if that was in there. One of the big ones is the face photo capture feature from WWE 2K. And I know a lot of people say, well, WWE is doing it. How come 2K can't do it? Two completely different games, a lot of different things involved in that. So it's not a one-to-one thing as easy as it might seem. So that would be something that, man, I would absolutely love to see in the game. But so that's the second thing. The third thing is, this is more about team creation. The ability to save team kits within like a MyLeague or a separate, like, create a team suite. Like, so I still think the way you still have to do it, like, so if you create a team, right, and you create the arena, the jerseys or whatever, you create all of that, right? I feel like the way it still is right now is you have to, you have to, I think, be in my team or something in order to even be able to save it as a whole team set. And I think that's really ridiculous because you can use that in so many different modes. So I just think that doesn't make sense. So I would love that right there. That's one that I kind of think is just a slip up. That should be in there. Like, from what I understand, I don't see that would be something that's totally undoable. So that's one I would say should definitely be able to be done. I don't know if we'll see it, but it should be able to be done. The fourth thing I would love to see, this is specifically like in MyGM and MyLeagues, because you have the rule change option, things that happen, like you can customize your league at the beginning, and then of course you can do rule changes, like there can be some rule changes that happen later on in your league and that sort of thing. So it would be really cool if you could implement like college rule changes. I've always wanted to see if you could like shorten the 3-point line. I want to be able to have like a 35-second shot clock. I think you might be able to do that already. Just the overall college style, because obviously they don't have a college basketball game anymore. So people have been trying to recreate that experience. The infamous New York had, and a few other people were doing the college hoops 2K mods on PC, and some of them even trying to do it on console. So just basically making that a little bit easier. I mean, they know people are trying to do it. You don't have to call it the NCAA rule set, but just allow. I mean, you know what? Everybody knows what would need to be added. That's not an easy thing to do because you have to then go in and change the entire AI system when you do that, so that people or the players on the floor will recognize where the new 3-point line is. So because they're set to recognize the 3-point line in a set area. And if you change that, all of that whole entire AI system has to change. So it's not as simple as just paint the 3-point line on the floor at a different plot and then just play. No, it's more to it than that. So that's not an easy change at all. So it would be cool, but it's not an easy change. Another thing, this is the fifth thing that is a rule change. I would like to see the 4-point shot, be able as a possible rule change. Now, obviously, it's not sim at all, but I do think that the NBA I would not be surprised if we saw the 4-point shot within the next 3 to 5 years in the NBA. Wouldn't shock me at all. I just, because with the regularity that people shoot from distance now, with the big three experimenting with it and not having it be like the most horrible thing ever to happen to basketball, and the fact that it would make games more exciting and that sort of thing. The NBA is a fans league. They are the most fan friendly league in sports. And whatever their fans like or want, even if it's to the detriment of the game overall, they are going to try to put. And I think that fans would dig it. I think most fans would dig it. What a lot of hardcore basketball fans don't realize is that they don't represent the majority. The majority of people are more casual fans. That's a larger number. And businesses have to cater to the larger number. Even if they know that it's like, this is kind of cheese. If the larger number wants that, it's the smart business thing to give them what they want. And I don't even know that a 4-point shot is a horrible thing. I'm just saying, I think there'd be some people that would dig it. The sixth thing is in franchise mode. I would love to see more franchise specific commentary support. And I have mentioned this before. I've actually even gone to 2K headquarters and mentioned this to people who actually work for the audio team. So when you're playing multiple years, or maybe later on in your like maybe your second season, right? Because when you do your first season, if you start from the draft, then you redraft whatever rookies just came in. A lot of the times the draft goes pretty much as it did before, or so we're not necessarily talking about that. But in that second season, when you have uploaded your first draft class, or you've created your first draft class, whatever, I would love to see like some commentary later on in that time period that's built in, where the commentators are saying things like, who this guy reminds me of. So say you got a 6'6" shooting guard, 6'6", 215 pounds, with amazing back to the basket post game athleticism, hard, just super competitive, great mid-range shooter, fantastic athleticism, would dunk on people, just one of the greatest players you've ever seen. If he's right in the same size frame, it would be so awesome to hear Kenny Smith or somebody else say, what, I'm not getting out of hand, but who this guy reminds me of? He's got some Michael Jordan in him. Or then, the same type of thing. If it's a 6'7" guy who's somewhere between 180 and 200 pounds, and he's really thin and he excels at running off screens and shooting threes, you're like, you hear Chris Webber say, this kid, I'm telling you guys right now, I know he's a rookie, or I know he's in his second season, but he reminds me a lot of Reggie Miller. Look at the body size. Well, they probably couldn't say Reggie Miller. They can't necessarily say, I don't know if they can use his name or whatever. But that's the kind of thing I think that would add so much life to a MyGM, MyLeague situation later on. I think you just be like, you literally be listening for the commentary, or even if it goes a step further, if you have composed a team with a similar dynamic. I mean, especially with the fact that they're giving all of the players like certain type of archetypes anyway. Like, like in 2K19, if you got a guy who has all these different badges or whatever, and I'm not talking about my career or anything like that. I'm talking about in MyGM. Because the players have badges. If you see a guy who's got all these badges, they may call him one of a kind. Another one might be a two-way superstar or whatever. So that kind of lets them link it between other players of the past. Because if this guy's a one of a kind and he has ratings that are similar to another player that's already in the game who has a similar size, then they could draw that comparison. Even with teams, if you have a team made up of two one of a kind wing players and a two-way superstar in the power forward or center, they may be like, oh, this team really reminds me of the 1983, 82, 83 Philadelphia 76ers or something to that effect. Like that kind of commentary would really blow up MyLeague, MyGM, and I already think 2K is close to having the best commentary. I don't know. Madden has really improved a lot. MLB The Show has gotten better too, but that would take it to another level. Nobody else is really doing that in franchise mode for commentary. Another thing, which is about presentation, is the entire injury presentation. So this is my 7th thing on this list. The injury presentation, and I make this same observation when talking about Madden. In real life, when somebody gets injured, right? Guy goes down, gets hurt. You don't know what the full extent of an injury is until like the next day when the MRI is done. They may have a first concept like within an hour or 2 hours or whatever, if it happens early enough in the game. And they may have a report that says early indications are he has suffered some type of blah blah injury or something to that effect, or they may say, oh, it doesn't look good, or you don't know, right? But later, like the next day, is when you find out what really happened to the guy. In a MyGM or in a MyLeague, there's no reason in the world why I should have the full diagnosis of the injury that just took place within the same game. And that happens all the time. Guy gets, first of all, the injuries don't happen enough anyway, so that's a whole separate thing. Injuries should be more frequent. But when a guy gets injured, they give you the full diagnosis within like 5 minutes or something. That just isn't right. You should have to go past the next day. You should have to finish the day on your calendar in the franchise mode before you find out what the extent of the injury is. The next thing, which is my 8th thing, is the whole technical foul dynamic. All right, so now this is something that I think could happen. I think it would piss some people off, but I think it's very realistic, and I think this is the way it should work. There are players in the NBA who get more technicals than others. It just is, right? It just is. Draymond Green and different players, those guys get more technicals. They should have a rating in the game that is based off of a player getting more technicals. So here's what happens, right? And here's how this works out. If there is contact with a player and there is no foul, or a player is called for a foul, or a player has a turnover that goes against like a traveling or something to that effect, something like that where it's a ref call, or even if there is physical play, a ton of physical play in the game. If there is a player who traditionally gets a lot of technical fouls, there should be something that happens where it's out of your control. And I know that's something a lot of gamers don't like, but if you play franchise mode, you do want it to be a more ratings-based thing. If Draymond Green gets into a lot of those different types of situations and he is, getting called for calls, I'm not saying every single time, but there should be some sort of algorithm that's built in there to say, hey, he's got a higher chance of getting a technical than everybody else. And then there should I mean, because 2K already has it where the players argue calls and they have these reactions on the floor and all that. Some of those reactions, depending on the players, everybody should be subject to it. But of course, you got people like Draymond Green that's going to get them frequently. A guy like Kawhi is going to like never get them or almost never get them, and he's going to almost never have those kinds of visual reactions on the floor. But how dope would that be if you're playing and Draymond Green goes off and gets the technical? DeMarcus Cousins goes off and gets this technical. I mean, that's going to be, I think, pretty fly. And that's something I think could happen. I think they could do that. Technicals, like I said, physical play, guys get to pushing and scrapping for loose balls. You see that kind of stuff happen. And I think it would change something altogether with the dynamic of like team building. You think about stuff like that. Do I want this guy on my team as I know he goes through that sort of thing where he gets technicals and that could cost me a game. Now, on the other hand, I think that could also create room for another badge, right? You could have a guy on your team who has the calming effect badge. So it's like a leader on your team who, when he's on the floor with the guy who gets all the technicals, who has the hot head or whatever, and maybe that's a badge that a person gets, hot head badge. When he's on the floor with the hot head, then what ends up happening is the hot head is less likely to get called for a technical. Now he can still get, because everybody knows when Draymond goes off, it ain't gonna happen, And maybe a coach can even have a hot head, have a calming effect. Maybe an assistant coach or whatever can have a calming effect badge, and if the coach has it, then it affects all his players. So that makes that particular coach more valuable. But if there can be a leader on the floor who has the calming effect badge, so if Draymond Green's technical rating is a 90, if he's on the floor with a guy who has a calming effect badge, now it drops to a 75 or something like that. So I think that would be dope. I think that would be super dope. So I'd like to see that. Now, number 9, we're getting into some stuff that's really kind of out there, but I still think it's kind of dope. I think players should age visually through multiple seasons, right? So you might be like, how in the world could they do how could they do that? Now, I'm going to tell you what really kind of flipped the switch with this for me, right? So everybody was all over this face app, where everybody was showing themselves old and all of that, right? I did it. I threw a couple pictures up on Twitter for laughs. But why couldn't 2K do a similar sort of thing? They already have the facial scans, and if you really want the truth, someone did a article on this and said how the face app actually works better on video game characters than it does on anybody else, like on real pictures. And they showed some examples of like Drake from Uncharted and stuff like that. So if they took the facial scans from every player in the game, right, and they put them maybe in 3 or 4 different aged filters, right? So you could have like the 55 to 65-year-old version of the person, and then you could have the the 35 to 45-year-old or the 45 to the 54-year-old version, and then you could have the 26 to or whatever, the 35 to 45-year-old version, and then from that, and you just kind of age them up that way. And when they get to that particular age, that's how you start. That's the render that they have. So all of these heads are there in the game, but when they get to a certain age, it literally swaps out the head for that. And this only happens in your MyGM or your MyLeague. So it switches out the head that is accessed according to whatever age the player is. And you could even do stuff like hairstyles could change. And of course, we don't know which hairstyle they're going to have, but it could kind of be a random thing. And 2K did this similarly before. I don't know how many people remember back, I think it was an ESPN NBA 2K5 when Ben Wallace was on the cover. Ben Wallace would come out sometimes with the afro blowed out. Sometimes he'd come out with cornrows. It would kind of be a random thing. So they could randomly determine where is LeBron going to lose all of his hair. So if in your MyGM LeBron has lost his hair, then he will be bald LeBron. Is LeBron going to have, just where he lost the hair on the top and he's got the the little bald island on the top and he's just got the hair on the sides, then fine. Is he just simply, is a player that has played with a whole ton of hair, like how Kobe White's hair is now, or a guy who has, braids or dreads? Is he, as he gets older, is he just going to go with a really, really low cut? Is he just going to go bald, just totally bald? Whatever, that would be so dope. And it's like I said, it's not a game by game basis. What it is, all right, now LeBron, now Kobe White's 30 in your season. And as a 30-year-old in your season, his hairstyle now is this. And that's what his hairstyle is, and it's going to stay that way until he gets to age whatever. And then his face and his hairstyle will change at that point too. I think that would be fantastic. I think it would be really dope. Now, my last one, and I know this is kind of long, but I kind of got into this whole concept. My last one is players becoming coaches, general managers, and assistant coaches. So in my last one, the one before this about the player's agent, you might have said, well, why would I want 55, 65-year-old LeBron? Well, I might want a 55, 65-year-old LeBron in case he becomes the general manager, in case he becomes the head coach. So then when I show him in game, I'm literally showing an older LeBron as the general manager, as the head coach. So when I'm showing him on the sidelines, he doesn't look like LeBron that just played. He looks like an older man, which is what he would look like in the game, in real life, if he was holding those posts. So if I just like Madden used to do this back in Madden 07, where the players would retire and they would become offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, head coaches, or whatever. And it was really dope. At that time, Madden had the best franchise mode of any sports game. They easily, hands down. But they have regressed horribly in that area. 2K could do this, and it would only further solidify how good their franchise mode already is and make it just that much better. So that's all I got for you guys. That's a ton. It's a lot. Some of these I've heard people make reference to in a couple other ways. So I'm sure I'm not the only person that's having these thoughts and concepts, but I think those things would be pretty fantastic. So let me know in the comments section which selections or which suggestions were your favorite, which ones you think are cool, wouldn't work. Let me know if you got some of your own that I didn't mention that you think would be cool. I do get an opportunity to talk to 2K on a fairly regular basis, get a chance to go down there to the headquarters, so I love to pass things on. Let me know what you think. As usual, I appreciate you watching. God bless and peace.
I'll be weak, I'm rather unique.